everyone. I'm Anya Esma, and today I want to talk about Gaza and my personal shadow work around it, and just give you some ideas in case you want to do some individual or collective shadow work about Gaza and the genocide that is happening there. So I haven't filmed a video in many months because, as you can see, I am moving and there's a lot of mess around here. I wasn't planning on filming anything anytime soon, really. And I didn't want all of this to be in the background, and I'm not happy about it, but this needs to be filmed and it's important to me. So yes, I felt a strong need to film this because I speak about Gaza a lot on Instagram, but not necessarily on YouTube, because it's just easier to keep up on Instagram and it's much harder to film a whole video, edit it, etc. In the middle of moving. So I've only sporadically posted here about it in the community tab. So besides that, I think I have this feeling that a lot of creators will understand, which is, what can I even add to the discussion in a long form video? But I feel, especially in the recent weeks, I've sort of noticed that I have stuff to say that I want to share. And that's why I'm sitting here, basically. And I know that a lot of the time people try to say, like, oh, don't make it about you. The situation isn't about you. Don't talk about it. But I think that's absolutely the wrong approach. I will get more into why I think it's the wrong approach. But I think, just to give a little bit of a preview, I want to say that it is about us and about our feelings about the situation as well. Because we as humans, as individuals, somehow have to handle this massive loss of humanity and this massive void of empathy that we see whenever we see people staying silent, or people even being in favor of the bombing of Gaza. So whenever we see that, it is painful. It's disorienting, it's disappointing, it's disillusioning about what we may have believed about humanity to be true beforehand. And I think it's really important to talk about that, and to talk about how we are going to handle that now and in the future as well. So I want to make this video essentially to give my own thoughts about how we can handle this on a spiritual level. I will give you some facts about my own opinions in a little bit, but just to give you a preview of the video, I will talk about how I handle it and how I suggest you could, or what questions you could ask yourself on a spiritual level, on a shadow work level, and basically just discuss how we can develop through this and evolve through this. And I would love to hear your opinions on that as well, because it's very difficult to find a path forward, and I think we have to do that collectively. This video is basically not about my opinion on Gaza, in the sense that I want you to believe the exact same things as me, but we are faced with the reality of a genocide that is happening, and we somehow have to respond to that, which I do a lot on Instagram, but not a lot on here. So here I want to take the opportunity to go a bit deeper with all of this. So essentially, I want to make this video for people who feel very helpless, who feel very powerless, and also stagnant, which is absolutely normal. But I've sometimes found ways out of that I just want to share with you, how I got out of stagnation or out of this feeling of powerlessness, though I still have that, I will be honest. I have my notes in front of me, by the way. That's why my arm is always reaching to scroll on my Mac, just so you know. So everything I say in this video is essentially my opinion, my conviction, my beliefs, my knowledge, my experience. All of it is mine, and I'm not telling anyone what to feel, what to do, how to act, what to think, how to do their shadow work. That's all on your conscience and your responsibility, but still I want to share what it's like for me, and I want to share suggestions. So before we get into the spiritual stuff, I think it's important to get on the same page of what my opinion is and what my stance is, so you know whether you even want to listen to what I have to say or you are totally on a different page from me. So here's the facts. Here's what I think. First of all, Israel is acting as an oppressive force within Gaza, controlling their access to basic necessities like water, like electricity, and now also access to humanitarian aid by blocking all of that from entering Gaza. And that is why I think that Israel is an oppressor in relation to Gaza. I am obviously in favor of a ceasefire, and I'm in favor of a solution that gives Palestinians the opportunity to move back into the houses that were stolen from them, to rebuild, and to have their own land, to return to their homes. I would not say that I'm in favor of all Jews being expelled from that region, because some of them do have their home there, not only since a few years ago, but for quite a while. But that is a more complex political subject that I honestly cannot speak on. But I do think that Jewish people in this world require a safe place for them to exist, because there is a lot of hatred against them in the world. And I think that we should support them in that. But taking land from indigenous people is not the way to go. Basically, stealing their land and just planting your new roots there is not okay at all, in no world. And I will talk more about why I think that happened and what it means on an energetic level. I think that in order to move out of this situation, it will require societal healing programs. If you know anything about the genocide that happened in Rwanda, you know that they had societal healing programs there, and they've done a lot of work to heal the trauma that was caused by the genocide and the re-traumatization of you now having to live with the people who killed your whole family, possibly, in the same city, because they still live there together. It's a difficult situation, needless to say, and they somehow managed to at least preserve some sort of peace and to give people the means to work on that trauma of living with people who have killed relatives of yours. And unfortunately, that's one of the best ways that you can handle the situation in the aftermath, in my opinion, because otherwise we will see a lot more revenge, a lot more killing, if this trauma isn't dealt with and there's somehow a way towards peace. And peace requires collective traumatic healing, or not traumatic healing, but collective healing from trauma. Especially in that region, but also in the whole world, because we're all seeing how our relatives react, how the celebrities react, and we need to deal with that. Anyway, I went off track there and kind of got ahead of myself. So obviously a huge step towards collective healing would be justice. As I'm filming this, it's the 12th of January, so this is before Israel has given its perspective on the claims of genocide brought forward by South Africa. And I hope that there will be justice served by the court, and that Israel is stopped at least from doing what it is doing right now, which is attempting a genocide. Or actually fulfilling it, I suppose. I don't know what the right vocabulary would be. Attempting, fulfilling in the proceedings of a genocide. Because if justice is served by a court, at least that is a step towards collective healing. And it gives visibility to the crimes and to the people who are suffering from those crimes. And I think that's very, very important. We all know that from our private shadow work, that the first step towards change is becoming aware of a behavioral pattern, and this kind of transfers here as well. The world needs to be aware of what is happening, and then healing can begin, and we can stop that violence. But awareness is required, and the court decision going against Israel would be a huge step in that. On the other hand, I think it would make healing near impossible if the court decision goes in favor of Israel, because then kind of all hope for humanity would be lost in millions of people. Okay, now that we've gotten all the facts out of the way, I want to speak about shadow work. I'm speaking as someone who wants to suggest shadow work questions, who wants to talk about my own shadow work. Once again, I do not have all the answers, but as my audience, I know that you're likely very empathetic people, very self-reflective people, and I think it's important for me to speak about these things and to possibly give inspiration or even advice or help or anything that you can take from this video. That's where I see myself. I don't have the ultimate answers, and I would love for any discussion in the comments to give the answers that you have maybe found in your own self-reflection and your own shadow work process in relation to Gaza. So first of all, I want to talk about the difference between collective and individual healing and shadow work, because I've mentioned it earlier in the video, but now that we're talking about the deeper shadow work, I want to be more specific about that. So collective healing comes from justice, and collective healing comes from us working together on social media, talking about it, people getting together, protests, as many people as possible talking about it with each other. But it also, the collective healing also is closely related, obviously, to the individual shadow work that we do. And I think that's one of the most important things that we have to face, that we have shadow work to do in relation to all of this. It's kind of similar to when the anti-racism discussion became huge in 2020. That was a huge collective topic, and many people woke up to maybe the microaggressions that they commit every day without noticing, or the prejudices they have, the stereotypes they have in their head, and questioning all of that. And a lot of that needs to happen in relation to Gaza as well, where we have to question ourselves and get honest with ourselves. I think the biggest thing for individual shadow work here is to examine in what situations we exhibit behavior that is energetically similar to what Israel is doing. This has been a super interesting question for me, and I will be more specific in a second, because it shows you how you are bringing that energy into your everyday life as well, and amplifying that energy on an individual level, but thus also on a collective level. We could ask ourselves, in what situations in my life am I greedy? Where do I want more than I may deserve, but I feel entitled to it and I want to protect myself, and that's why I am aggressive towards others, for example. Because a lot of Israel's talk is obviously about defense, and I do believe that many people who support Israel actually believe that. Some of them don't, but some of them don't believe it and still support it, and some of them do believe it, and that's why they support Israel. That's what I'm trying to say. This belief that you are defending yourself when you are really being aggressive, and when you are really not just setting boundaries, but you are going beyond your boundaries to hurt another. Think about where you do that in situations in your own life, and how that energy of needing to feel dominance and needing to feel power over others helps you cope with a feeling of fear, powerlessness, helplessness yourself. This is something that I definitely had to look at, because the feeling of powerlessness and helplessness, which we can also see in many Jewish people because of the ways in which they were traumatized and the ways in which they were not protected in the past, this feeling just perpetuates itself, and it often manifests itself in aggression towards others in the name of defense, or very strict boundaries that hurt other people and that are maybe not necessary, but you feel like you need to protect yourself in an aggressive way. And all of these things, you can see an energetic similarity between what Israel is doing and what might be going on with your own shadow work and with your own behavioral patterns. So thinking about this and then trying to embody the opposite of that, trying to heal that, is important. So looking at where you're greedy, where you're taking from others, where you are aggressive towards others in the name of self-protection, think about that. Think about that. I know that it's kind of mental gymnastics to go from a country doing something to a person doing something. And I am in no way saying that it's the same thing at all with the scale that they are doing it on. But I think energetically we can see the connections, and we can do that shadow work on an individual level on our own. Because the only way that the world changes is if those behaviors don't continue. I don't think anyone would blame Palestinians after this if they are out for blood. And that's exactly the issue. That unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but you know how it is. Us humans, we often think justice equals revenge. And that's not going to work, because then we will never have peace in this world. Never. So once everything is said and done, some sort of peace and some sort of healing has to take place. And that healing cannot be in the form of killing people. It does have to come in the form of some form of justice, like prison sentences, or for some people even executions. But it cannot be bloodshed on a massive scale, because that just perpetuates the problem. And it's the same with everything that we have in our lives. If someone is aggressive towards us and we're aggressive back, it's just going to continue like that forever. And that's not to say that you can't feel rage, you can't feel the will to hurt people who hurt others. It's normal, and that's the human experience. But in the end, I think we have to be honest with ourselves with regards to where that ends, and whether it's legitimate for us to want peace and to talk about peace if we then want bloody revenge afterwards. And that also relates to the issue of now demonizing all Jews and all Jewish people in the world, and thinking they were all in favor of this, which they are obviously not. Many of them are speaking up against it, which I think is very important. And that's something we have to examine within ourselves as well. I'm kind of getting off track, so let me get back on the list of things that I want to talk about. So another thing I want to talk about is that I am from Germany. I was born in Germany, and I at least have partly German genes within my body. I have partly German ancestry, and in this time, I think it's extremely important for me to do shadow work or to do ancestral work around the topic of what my ancestors did during the Nazi regime. I don't want to psychologize it and be like, oh, this is only happening because many Jewish people, especially the government of Israel, did not do their shadow work. They did not do their trauma healing. There may be completely different political reasons. It's not an emotional topic. It's not just they're reenacting their trauma, like a child who was beaten beats their own child, rather than being like, it ends with me, I'm not beating my own child. You know, it's not as easy as that. It's not as simple as that. But in terms of shadow work, I think that helps us understand a little bit of what's going on, and it helps us understand why we need to also understand the Holocaust, our ancestors' role in that, our ancestors' role in the Second World War, and all of that. You could even take it further and say, because this is about oppression, you may need to think of any kind of oppressive energy that your ancestors have had in relation to a minority. So this could, for Americans, also mean to look at slavery. to look at the history of slavery within their own family, within their ancestry, etc. But for me, as a German, it means looking at what my family did during the war times, which was luckily not a lot. So I don't have the deepest ancestral healing and shadow work to do there, because neither of my grandparents were actively involved in the war. But I don't want to get too much into the history of that because that's probably boring to people. But anyways, I'm lucky in that regard, or well, more than lucky, I guess. They had a moral compass and ended up not committing any atrocities that I now have to deal with on an ancestral level. Another thing I want to talk about is how I used to feel very stuck the past 2 months. I used to feel very stagnant, very stuck. I have this move happening. I managed to do that. But beyond that, whenever I would sit down and have a free minute, I would just scroll. I would numb myself. I would look at footage from Palestine and I'd be like, how can the world be so fucking terrible? You know, and I felt like even if I speak about it, even if I donate, it's not enough. And it's not enough in the sense that I needed to really feel the emotion of sadness and of terror and of disappointment in the world, really. That's what you have to sit down and actually feel it. I have the tendency to intellectualize my feelings a lot, which you can probably tell by how I'm speaking here and how I speak about shadow work. I intellectualize a lot rather than just sitting and feeling things which cannot be put into words. I always want to put everything into words. And one thing that really I found interesting was an Instagram video by a psychologist who said that people too often ask why in their own self-reflection. Why am I this way? And the same way we are asking now, why is the world this way? How can the world be so bad? It's the same questions we ask ourselves. How can I be acting like that? Why am I the way I am? Which is kind of the basis for shadow work, sure, but it's not the whole picture. And that psychologist emphasized the importance of thinking about the what as well. What is important to us? What can we do, of course? What does something mean for me? And I think that gives you a lot more power than always this why? Why is the world this way? Why are people terrible? To focus on the self and say, what is important to me? What am I taking from this? What am I doing? What am I reflecting on? What does it mean for me that this is happening? What does it mean for my relationships to the people I love that this is happening? What role did my ancestors play in all of this? And the what is important here to think about that. But at the same time, the other building block is to just feel it. But I have to admit that feeling it is terrible. It's terrible to sit down and to feel feelings about what's happening, because it's an endless sea of suffering. It's not like when you have a personal feeling about something and you feel it, and after maybe 15 minutes you're done feeling it. Because this pain and this terror and this disappointment and the loss of humanity globally and collectively in our own small communities is just, it's endless. And feeling it, you could feel it 24/7 if you wanted to. That's the issue with actually feeling it for me. So I intersperse the feeling with the what's, asking what am I feeling, what is important, etc., rather than always being like, why? Why is the world so awful? Another feeling I briefly want to talk about is guilt for not posting enough about it, for not speaking enough about it, for not going to protests, for not donating. And I think that's a very fair feeling. If you're not doing anything, like literally nothing, not talking about it, not protesting, not donating, none of it, not thinking about it, not doing any information collection about it, you should feel guilty. That's my opinion. I don't want to attack anyone, or maybe I do. But I think that's something to feel very guilty about. If you actively see a genocide happening and you are not doing literally anything. I'm not saying you have to post about it. I'm not saying you have to speak to your family about it. But you should find a good measure of what you can do in order to help. Whether that's collectively, individually, monetarily, with your presence in community or anything. Another thing I want to talk about is that I found myself thinking a lot about what will happen afterwards. In the sense that how can I ever vote for a party in this country, in my case Germany, with a good conscience, knowing that they did nothing to oppose all of this? That's a question I honestly don't have an answer to. I was always someone who was like, you have to vote, don't in protest, stop voting or something. Voting is really important. But back then it felt a lot less, the stakes didn't feel so high, at least in Germany. I cannot speak about the US politics, the stakes are a lot higher there. But speaking about Germany, it was kind of like, you choose the lesser evil. But now the evil is so prevalent, we see it so clearly, that the lesser evil is still so bad. So how can I, with good conscience, vote for anything in this country? That's crazy to me. I don't know the answer to that. And I think another point that goes along with that is the fact that social media is facilitating so much of this individual and collective shadow work by showing us the opinions and the faces of the people that either are silent or that even defend Israel's genocide in Palestine. And we are shown that basically 24/7. Whenever you go on any celebrity's profile, you will be faced with silence. Not all celebrities, I don't want to say that, but you know what I mean. People that you maybe liked, people that you looked up to, whether it's celebrities, spiritual gurus, influencers, anything, you are faced with silence or support for Israel. And that's something that they probably wouldn't even express in real life, but their silence is supporting Israel indirectly. Or brands, companies that you used to buy from, everything. We're faced with this silence or support permanently. And for the people who see that this genocide is going on and think that it needs to be stopped, that is immensely difficult to deal with. Yesterday, I think social media plays such a crucial role here. Yesterday, in the hearing of South Africa, where they brought their case forward against Israel, they even used footage from social media, because that's kind of the only thing that people in Gaza have now to show us what's going on. And the role of social media is just huge. And I think it's really important for us to reflect on that too, how we relate to it, how we try to maybe avoid it by only interacting with creators who don't talk about it, which I kind of understand. We need an escape too. I will talk about that in a second. I will talk about compassion fatigue very briefly and how we need rest from engaging with all of this. But I'll get into that later. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself again. The role of social media is just huge. And I still haven't comprehended fully how that can facilitate our shadow work. But I think it's facilitating already so much self-reflection, so much, do I still want to interact with this person? Do I still like this celebrity, etc.? So that's huge. But I think we also shouldn't make it bigger than it is, in the sense that, yes, be disappointed in people, but focus on what you can do. Focus on donations, protesting, speaking up about it. Don't focus too much on how disappointed you are in a lot of the people that you follow, probably. because I think that just takes away energy. That's again this strain of why is the world so terrible? Why is this person not speaking up? But however, if it is empowering to you to call people out on it, be like, hey, why aren't you talking about this? This is hurting me that you're not talking about it. Feel free to do that. For me, it's just draining energetically to interact with people on that level of kind of telling them you're doing something wrong and then having to explain to them why, and then it just goes on and on. But if you want to do that, do it. Okay, another thing that I want to talk about is a little bit of a mindset shift, because I think a lot of people are like, why would I speak about it? Why would I post about it? Why would I inform myself about it? And I think it's super important to see the power of social media in making us feel not alone, and especially in making Palestinians not feel alone. I think many people underestimate that, and that is also why it is a fair expectation of influencers, content creators, celebrities, brands to speak up against it, because it shows those people they are not alone. Because imagine this was happening to you. Imagine your whole family got killed and everyone on social media is acting like the world is totally fine. It's not fair. It's a global issue. And that's why we need to talk about it. And everyone should be talking about it. Even just so that those people see that they are heard and seen and perceived. And it's frankly embarrassing if you are an influencer with Palestinian followers or followers who are very closely allied with Palestinians, and you don't speak about it at all. It's embarrassing, and it makes you lose followers, obviously, if that's the thing that matters to people, which unfortunately I think for many people that is what matters to them, that they would lose followers, and that's why they speak up. But anyways, that's a different topic. So it's worth it to speak up, because how would you feel if social media was just going on, the news cycle was just going on as normal, not even maybe broadcasting what South Africa said about Israel, and just ignoring it like many Western media does? It's hurtful, and by posting about it, by speaking about it, by going to protests, you can show that you are seeing them, even if that's all that you can do. And also, you have your own voice to add to all of this. As I said in the beginning, I was like, what can I add to this? I don't know. But look at what you're doing and add your own perspective, add your own approach to it. Even if it's just, like makeup artists on Instagram or makeup content creators, let's say, they create a look that looks like the Palestinian flag. That is something. It's something that reaches people. It's not useless, because it gives visibility to the cause and it gives visibility to the suffering of the people. And that is so important, that we don't gaslight Palestinians into thinking, oh, it's not that bad what's happening to you and you deserved it. Because that's what Western media really wants us to believe, and wants probably Palestinians themselves to believe that they deserve it. And I think, or that it's their own fault. And I think any small voice in all of this, whether it's someone using it as makeup, or me speaking about shadow work, or anything really, someone offering a tarot reading about it, whatever, it all helps. It all gives visibility, and you can't ignore that. And I think my audience mostly consists of people who are very self-reflected and sensitive, and who are affected by this greatly. So it's so important for me to speak about it, to give my perspective, to maybe give tools to you that I use myself, even though I have to say I struggle with it a lot as well. So, but I'm trying my best, and I'm adding my voice, I'm adding my perspective to it, and I can only tell any other content creator or influencer to do the same. So I briefly mentioned compassion fatigue earlier. I think it's a super important topic that we haven't talked about enough. Compassion fatigue is usually something that you see with people who are in a caretaking job, like people who take care of sick people or old people, like seniors. at some point you lose the compassion for their suffering, for their needs, and you just treat them as objects. My mother worked in that industry and has seen that with so many of her colleagues who were doing care work for seniors. And it's just a part of the job that this happens, unfortunately. But it's not something you can't do anything against. And I think the same thing is happening, or something similar is happening with Gaza, where you have all these strong feelings of compassion. You are faced with a suffering all the time that you become tired of it. You numb yourself to it, and you're like, the world is a terrible place anyway. I expected it, you know? Any atrocity that happens, you're like, I'm not surprised anymore. Whatever. But if we have that stance, we lose our humanity, we lose our empathy, we use our compassion, we use our critical thinking ability of it shouldn't be this way, and the fact that I'm unsurprised is terrible. And we need to preserve that. I will link a video below, if I remember, about compassion fatigue. Some psychologists, I don't really like a lot of her videos, but this one was good. I think her name is Katie Morton, so you can find it on YouTube as well yourself. About compassion fatigue, she suggests things you can do as well, and one of them is distraction. One of them is to take care of your own needs. So I think we shouldn't blame people for kind of checking out of the news cycle and checking out and being like, oh, it's just your privilege. You're privileged to be able to ignore it. Of course, that is true, but we also need to give that space to people, because otherwise compassion fatigue is going to set in and they'll be like, I don't care anymore. The world is terrible. I knew that from the get-go, and now I am just numb to it. I'm numb to the pain of everyone else. So I think it's important to give people the opportunity to have a distraction, to not always engage with it. But I also think that we need to call people back and be like, if you were taking a break, it's time to come back, because you're needed, your voice is needed. So do that at your own discernment, essentially. The thing is also with Palestine, and this is the last thing I want to say, is usually I'm the person to say, like, do what feels right to you. If it feels right to you to speak out about a political topic, do it. If it feels right to go to a protest, do it. But in this situation, I have to question, will you be able to live with yourself if you are just silent, if you are just sitting at home and saying, I'm too sensitive to engage with any of this. I don't want to donate, don't want to protest, don't want to talk about it, don't want to post about it, don't want to engage with the news cycle. Can you live with yourself afterwards? Do you think you can? That's a serious question that you have to ask yourself. I don't know if that's the best motivation. The motivation should be compassion and empathy and wanting to not gaslight Palestinians into thinking that they deserve this. But if you need more motivation, ask yourself whether you will be able to live with the regret of not having done anything. As someone who was born in Germany, or with German genes at least, I've seen this around me. I've been aware of this, that many people have regretted that they silently or loudly agreed with the killing of Jewish people during the Holocaust. And I don't want to compare all of that to each other. I don't think that's right to draw a bunch of parallels between these situations. But the point is, people regret it later, everything that they did or didn't do. And for us today, it's infinitely more easy to speak up. The repercussions are infinitely less serious if you make a post about it, or if you go to a rally, or if you go to really anything, like donate. There's no repercussions. You can do that. So yeah, that's kind of my motivating speech to do it and to get into action. I hope that all of the thoughts that I shared in this video are somehow helpful. I know I rambled a lot. I went from place to place, but I think I gave some tools or some ideas how to think about this, how to act around it, or even just shared my thoughts, my philosophy on some of this. So hopefully you can take something from that. Feel free in the comments to discuss this. Obviously, stay civil to each other. I don't think we'll have a problem with that because I don't expect my audience to insult each other, but I just wanted to say it. So yes, thank you so much for watching. I know this was a long one. And if you feel called to it, subscribe. If you want more information about shadow work, etc., tarot, anything like that, I'm tired. I'm done. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Oh, and thank you for the bravery of even watching this video, because some people will probably ignore it and be like, I don't want to engage with that. So props for that.